What's happening, you guys? Welcome back to Let's Go Win podcast. We are in for an absolute treat today because this show is all about helping people be happy, healthy, and wealthy. And what this gentleman is bringing to the table, what it's all about, man. I read his bio and I was like, oh yeah, we gotta get this guy out here. So there's a sleeping giant in every human. Brian Bogert's purpose in life is to awaken those giants within and turn them into legends by helping them grab what they believe is just out of their grasp. Brian is a heart surgeon without a blade. He does not start outside with what you need to do. He starts inside with who you are. As a human behavior and performance coach, speaker, and business strategist, Brian disrupts the normative approach on how to create sustainable growth and lasting change personally and professionally. Brother, what is happening? How are you?
Dude, I'm awesome. We just wrapped up a celebration ceremony for a challenge we ran this week, and it's just incredible to see deep, real, authentic connections exist in this world.
Let's talk about that, man. I mean, celebration ceremony. Like I said off air, you say things in a cool way that I'm like, all right, cool. I like this. It's not just like, all right, we had a celebration. No, we had this whole thing. So talk to me about that, man. What'd you do?
Yeah, so we just we ran our very first take out your trash challenge, and it's about helping people literally identify and remove the trash from their past that no longer serves them and is in their way. And we've got this belief that literally it's the only thing keeping people stuck, right? Our trash are those things that are tied to our emotional triggers, behavioral patterns, and environmental conditioning that keep coming back as our fatal flaw and then repeat the same pattern. So in a span of a week, we created these micro lessons to really be able to guide people through in a gamified way in an app that we worked to help build and develop, and really helped celebrate wins, gratitude, and help people really go deep on who they are and things that are actually in their way from their past, the proverbial trash. So we had ways to measure actions that people took. And dude, we had over 100 participants in this last challenge, over 8,000. There was 8,800 actions taken in a span of 7 days towards people raising their awareness, their intentionality, their ownership, their ability to unpack and process things, their ability to flip open their lid, not to react by flipping their lid, but flip open their lid and see what rose to the top. And then to be able to scan their can regularly so that they can move through life. And so, dude, we were celebrating all that took place. There was over 300 personal journals through the week in moments that people caught themselves and were able to reposition and center the situation, diffuse it, and themselves so that they can move. Bro, like, we're celebrating people being able to actually drop their armor, be seen and connected, and move through the world in a meaningful way.
Yeah, I love the way you phrase these things, taking out the trash. I'm seeing this come out, and you say flip the lid. So now I'm literally watching my brain open up, and I'm like, all right, let's take this shit out. This is not helping what I'm doing. The way you put it, man, it immediately is a tangible thing. Is that helping people become more vulnerable, brother? Because it's not some academic speak, but rather it's like, hey, we got some trash, some stuff that's not doing good stuff in here. Let's get it the hell out.
Yeah. So, what's interesting, and I really appreciate this question because we were introduced by 2M. And I will tell you, to Hank and Steve's credit, they hit me between the forehead with a 2x4 about 6 months ago and said, Brian, to your point exactly, there was intellectual stuff that was up here and it wasn't landing in the same way, right? The problem, the solution, and the path needed to be the same. And we landed on take out your trash because it was one of the things that so many people can get triggered by. When you're asked to take out the trash, most people are like, I don't want to do that. Or because they're used to being told to do that when they were a kid, like they get defensive and angry and they're like, you're not going to tell me what to do, right? Like the analogy lands because we all know what feeling like garbage is. We all know those moments that like we felt like trash, that we've either buried others in our trash from the past or we're getting buried in theirs. The biggest thing that opens people though, brother, is not just the concept and the simplification of it and the reminder that we take out trash in our homes and businesses daily. So we need to do it in ourselves to keep moving. But it's also truly just the ability for people to understand that to do this effectively, it means you have to start to look at yourself objectively and non-judgmentally. Because most people just raise their levels of awareness and they just become more aware of all the ways they should be judging themselves, which keeps them further tripping on that trash and stuck in the muck and the yuck from their past. But when they can exist in this moment and start to see it more clearly, objectively and non-judgmentally, but sit in it long enough to see what it's pointing you towards, i.e., the lessons you can extract from your experiences so that you can become intentional moving forward versus operating in this position of blindness.
Yeah, man, they nailed this concept, or at least for me, immediately. It's like I think of trash sitting there and that gets stinky. So we need to get rid of it. We need to remove it.
Yep.
No judgment here, man. Just because you had, again, the whatever, some egg cartons and a bottle of wine and whatever garbage you had, it's not a bad thing. It's just time to get something new.
Truth.
Time to take that out. They absolutely crushed that. Talk to me more, though.
Well,
bro.
so I have to give credit to this because it was their guidance and partnership, but it was my wife that came up with the language.
Ooh.
She literally was like, well, what about when you get triggered when you take out your trash? And it just landed. And Hank, Steve, and I and her were all on the call, and we were like, great. And then the podcast that you're going to join me on, again, I have to give credit to my wife again. They helped us understand what we were missing in our messaging that was preventing the level to land, and they guided it and me to help clear out some of the trash that was keeping me from being my best version in the process. But I have to pause and say my wife came up with that language because she's the whole reason. In the podcast, same thing. We were brainstorming on the title of a name and a show, and my wife said, what about flipping the lid? Let's go, because we're going to flip the lid on the stories that have shaped the most significant and successful people creating impact in this world. You're one of them, and you're going to join us. But 2M has been a beautiful partnership, but I have to honor my main partner in life because she gets a lot of credit in this process.
Well, she should, man. She absolutely crushed that. So give credit where credit's due. And, we don't talk about that enough. And I will get to my question because I want to hear more on this, not shame ourselves. But, I want to take this pause in this moment, how important this is, that significant other, that person in our life that is that creative, if we allow them to be, right? Instead of saying, no, babe, I got this. You take care of the kids or the house or your job or whatever thing you have. You're saying, no, come into my world, please. And not only that, please contribute. And she crushed it, man.
And she does every time. Thank you for seeing it that way. I'll tell you, when she first integrated into our business, it wasn't that way. And she came in originally primarily trying to support me, but that meant defaulting to more admin related duties. And I had a block, and so did she, that prevented us from really seeing what that was, because she kept saying, well, what do you want me to do in the business? And I'd be like, whatever you want. Because for me, I thought I was giving her freedom to discover where she would flourish in the business. And what it led to was a greater amount of resistance until one day it became very obvious. She wanted me to demonstrate and communicate where I saw her value in the business. Because she was so used to not being able to understand her value or her worth tied to specific tasks. And so that was the shifting moment, because what I was able to very clearly say to her is, I was like, babe, I don't care if you're sending emails on my behalf, if you're scheduling, I don't care if you're touching anything that's like that. Like, if you never wanted to touch it again, great, we'll hire out for that always. But what matters is when you actually show up. If you show up and you show up like there and present, every time she's there and present, we're better. And the reality of it is for me, dude, I get credit as if this is 100% me. I get credit externally in the world when really it's only 50% mine. My wife is my greatest coach, my greatest confidant, my greatest reflection, my greatest mentor. And so she's also my partner in life and in everything we do. So thank you for pausing long enough to acknowledge that, and for giving me the opportunity to say that further, because truly, when she just is present and there, the trajectory is different.
Well, look, it's really a selfish endeavor because my wife's wildly gifted and talented, and I'm trying to always include her because this is a teammate, right? And I don't care if it's teammate at home or in business, whatever we are building, because to your point, JM's face is up there, Brian's face is up there. That's all. Yes, that's a piece, but there's a whole bunch more behind the scenes. And so, yeah, Lisa's going to be listening to this. Let's talk about the shame part, brother, because you talked about not tripping over this garbage. And I see this visual of literally going through a landfill where it's like, yeah, man, I won't be tripping on this stuff. Landing in shame, that's some nasty goo, bro. So how do we give ourselves some grace to say, it's okay. We all have baggage. We all have some garbage.
Well, I'll start by answering the question really directly, and then I'll answer it specific to shame, because I think that it's one and the same, but it's important to expand on shame. The first thing that I want everyone to hear is the trash from your past, probably 90% or greater of it, is not your fault. It's generationally inherited, it's patterned and conditioned in. And I would argue that you might be unconscious to as much as 90% of the trash from your past. And so here's the reality. It is not your fault, but it becomes your responsibility once you become aware of it, or once someone makes you aware that you've been burying them in your own trash. Because once you start burying others and creating a ripple effect of damage in the world, it's bigger than just you. And that does become your responsibility because you're putting it into other people's worlds. So the very first thing to be able to even look inward and admit that you have trash is for you to recognize that most of it's not your fault. And so that I have to really acknowledge hard.
Yeah, so that's strong. Where did you learn this? Because I can remember this moment, and I say it differently, but it's the same principle and idea in terms of conditioning, in terms of hardwired stuff that we good, some bad, and a lot bad. When did it come to you, Brian, where you're like, holy shit, thanks, mom and dad, other generations, which, by the way, our kids are going to have the same stuff, right? No matter how great a parent you are, there's challenges that come with some of our beliefs. When did that hit you, man? What, you know, maybe this will tell me the story of how you got to doing what you do.
Yeah.
Because I can remember the moment it happened for me, and it was like, wow, well, that lid is never going back on. You opened up the box, and now I know.
Yeah, so I would tell you that the journey to like really, really go deep and discover started 7 to 10 years ago. And it was when I woke up at 27 years old, realizing that I had all the whats I'd ever wanted in the world. What house, what car, what amount of money, right? The wife, the beautiful kids on the way, that like all of it. I had everything. We had a developing and growing business that we ended up growing to over 15 million in the span of that decade. It was beautiful. But I woke up and I had started looking around in circles of people making multiple 6 figures, 7 figures, 8 figures in some cases, realizing that a lot of us were miserable. And so I got all the whats I ever wanted, but it was very obvious that it cost me the ultimate price, which was who I was. And that's when I started the process of rebuilding. And so 10 years later, I can tell you very confidently that I not only know exactly who I am, but all the whats in my world are a manifestation of who I am, not the other way around. But I would tell you that there have been layers, right? 7 to 10 years ago is when it got hit. It probably 7 years ago hit me really hard on the shame side, where I had to go deeper. And our son was diagnosed with autism, and we had to unpack that and understand what that meant for our household. Then a few years later, when my daughter kisses me on the cheek and I cried and realized that I'd shut off emotion 25 years prior, and I never really was feeling things in the full depth of it. Well, human connection without emotion isn't really human connection. Right. And so when I started to really go through these things and started to sit in them and understand them, that's when I started to realize there was a lot of stuff that has happened to me that really wasn't my fault. Yet my armor and my shame had conditioned me to believe that it was my fault for so many years. And that was part of what kept me stuck. And so what I will tell you is, we haven't talked about this, but I have to acknowledge it because I was given a couple of gifts pretty early in life. When I was 7, I was run over by a truck and my left arm was completely severed from my body. It was reattached. I had 24 surgeries, years of adversity. And I'll tell you, there was a couple of things that hit me really hard in that first part of the experience, though I wasn't conscious to it for years later, right? One is that we're sitting in the hospital bed and I'm laying there feeling sorry for myself. Literally at 7 years old, I remember like, what is my life going to look like? What am I like? What's going to happen? And I felt like it was a dream for about 2 to 3 days before I even realized that this was real. And then when I came back to full consciousness and I'm existing there, it's like I'm feeling sorry for myself. And then the families in the ICU started coming up to us and saying, Brian, we're so sorry for what happened to you. Wrapping our family in love. We're so sorry for what happened to you. What can we do to help? And then we find out that the kid is laying in the hospital bed next to me with a terminal illness, and they don't know if they're going to live another 30 days. My life was secure. My limb was unknown at that moment. Right? 24 surgeries later, years of work to get it to the fact that I can function with it today, but they didn't know if they were going to live for another 30 days. So that first part allowed me to understand early that I wasn't going to allow myself to get stuck by the things that had happened to me, but instead get moved by what I could do with it. And I believe that moved people move people. Now, again, the fault and the shame were much more layers, but that was something that I really not only had when I was born, but through that situation was given deep perspective. And then I remember when I came out of the hospital, I had a teddy bear in between wearing my sling. And I had to have my arm out at 90 degrees so the bone would actually heal appropriately. I mean, literally all the way off. So they had to do the bone, all the soft tissue reattachment. And everybody would say, "Hey, Brian, what happened to you?" They were expecting me to be like, "Oh, I was racing bikes with my brother and I went down hard. Like I jumped off the jungle gym and I broke my arm." And I would look at them deadpan in the eye and I'd say, "I was run over by a truck and my left arm was torn off." Jaws would hit the ground and they would always pause. In fact, very few people actually looked at me beyond that. Almost everybody would pause and turn to my parents for validation because they didn't believe what I'd just told them because it sounded too unreal. So I remember very young recognizing that my truth wasn't being seen and understood, and I wasn't being connected, and I was being limited through the lenses of what they were viewing me through and what they'd be capable of in my situation if it was them. And those things really propelled me forward to keep digging.
Perspective as a 7-year-old, it is fascinating because one of my best friends had stage 3, I think, cancer at 19. And whenever I see Vin, he's always happy. He's always smiling. And the one lesson I've taken from him is has a different perspective on life. And it is amazing, brother, when tragedy, quote unquote, whatever happens, not to us, but for us, i.e. me losing my dad in March, then we get perspective on, holy shit, man, I need to be in the present. I need to live and love every single day. How do we hold on to it, brother? Is it something that you have to just have this radical, a thing happen to you where it's like, hey, dummy, hold on to this. Don't ever let it go, because there's always going to be good. There's always going to be bad and all the in between. And that's life. And it's a question I've been asking myself a lot, Brian, is how do I help coach others hold on to this perspective? Because when I see Vin or hearing you as a 7-year-old saying, man, that kid may or may not have gotten out of that hospital bed. Hopefully he did, but more than likely not, based on what you said. And yes, I had this thing happen, but yet I am going to live every day and I'm going to give everything I have. How do we give that to others, man? Can we?
So that's a great question. I even like the depth in which you took it. What I will say and what I'll acknowledge first is I think that it's very difficult to replace a healthy relationship with mortality. And I do believe that somebody's relationship with death and life is very important for them to be able to move. Now, that said, you can't necessarily replicate a trauma that might make you feel like you're about to lose your life. And so to your friend that you talk about, and so many others that I know that were young, growing up, had medical issues, had early brushes with death, there does seem to be a little bit different rhythm to the way that you live after you've been there. But what I want to call attention to is like, just because I can sit here now 30 years later and speak so articulately about this, having done the work, having dug myself, having done these things, that doesn't mean that I've always been like light and shining. It just doesn't. It's life, and there's elements of perspective. So what I'll tell you is 7 to 20, I formed a powerful intellectual narrative that was, I'm strong, I'm capable, I'm good, I can do anything. The subtitle of that is I can do anything by myself, right? And oh, by the way, it served me very well, right? And I truly broke so many expectations by what we call mindset, mental toughness, right? What I didn't realize for a very, very long time, but was forced back into my world through another physical situation, I rebroke my arm at 20 and I almost lost it again. And I went 10 months with it hanging by my side. And I went into probably the darkest period of isolation, disconnection, and depression that I've ever experienced. And the biggest reason is because nobody was there to help me. And it's not that I didn't have family and friends. It's that's when I realized the power of our narratives, because the world will believe them. And so they weren't there because they believe Brian's good, Brian's capable, Brian's strong. And because that sub narrative was so quiet, they were like, oh yeah, but if Brian needs help, he'll ask for it. But in the most vulnerable period of my life, I didn't have the courage to ask for help. And in fact, my own parents didn't even know how much I was suffering. And so it's easy to get healthy reminders around some of these things. But the thing that almost cost me my life, and fortunately my arm was saved, I always thought was my transformational story. I was re-experiencing this at 20 that gave me the perspective where I didn't have my family around me guiding me through the process this time. I was re-experiencing things that I had when I was 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, now as a grown man and an adult trying to figure out how to move through it, right? And it really gave me the understanding that I really wasn't focusing on human connection, which is what helps us actually open, be vulnerable, and gain perspective enough to keep ourselves moving. And so that's when I shifted to vulnerability and authenticity, which is what allowed me to start to open this up a little more. But I wanted to make sure that everybody knows, like, there are still days that I have darkness. There are still days that I struggle. And I don't say this to impress. I say this to say, we don't have to carry as much of the weight as we've been carrying for a long time. And the longer you carry the trash from your past, the more it will incrementally crush you, the more it's going to separate you from the things that you want most, which is to be seen and understood and connected. And the more you're going to be stuck smelling all of this for the rest of your time with the inability to just take a breath as you bury others in it. And so I learned that early, but I relearned that as little as 18 months ago when my wife and I discovered that I had anger I didn't even know was there, brother. Like, it happens. And just because you have a brush with death, or just because you have perspective, it doesn't matter your story compared to the extremities of someone else's story. What matters is, what did this story mean to you? What are the lessons you can extract? How did you feel through this? What are the intellectual and emotional narratives that were formed through these impactful times in your life? And how do you use those for meaning and purpose so that you no longer have to remain stuck? It's possible. That's just what we're trying to show everybody.
Yeah, man, I have a couple. If I forget, don't let me forget to go back to armor, because you've mentioned that twice. And again, another great visual. You know, I see these knights wearing their armor and why you wear it. Got it. Cool. So that's a visual in my head. But your shirt, brother, is fucking awesome. Embrace pain to avoid suffering. All right. So I say embrace the suck. I love what you're saying here, because now we're talking about really creating some, I don't know, momentum. It's really getting some clarity in life, and just knowing that, look, in order to get to where we want to go, there's going to be some nasty stuff along the way, man. We're going to go through some stuff. Talk to me about the shirt. It's beautiful.
This is one of the lessons I attribute to my parents. Because in the early days, man, I was being really guided through the process. And so I was a little bit in a fog. And they ultimately were the ones that saw that the idea of seeing their son grow up without the use of his left arm was a source of great potential suffering for them. So they willed themselves day in and day out to do what was necessary, to do what was tough, to ultimately embrace the pains required to strengthen and heal me. So whether it was intentional or not, what they did was they ingrained in me this philosophy and way of living. But I think it's really important that we understand what pain and suffering are. And I'll give you a couple of analogies so that people can understand that this applies to everything in our life, right? What's interesting is that the Latin root to the word suffer is to carry. So truly, people are suffering largely on the inside because of the trash from their past that they continue to carry and push down. Okay, what we need to understand is the world tells us to reduce, eliminate, or avoid pain at all costs, right? I mean, and it makes sense because it's a natural evolutionary response to survival. But 100 years ago, you cut your leg, you could die. And today, in most first world countries, it's a cut, you're going to be okay, right? That fear of death and mortality isn't on the table in the same way that all of us would have experienced 100 years ago because of modern medicine and technology. So if we recognize that, then we need to redefine what this looks like for ourselves. Pain's defined as short-term, intermittent, a direct cause from something, and alleviated once that direct cause is removed, right? But then we as human beings do what we always do and screw it up by putting other words in front of it, like acute and chronic. Acute maintains the definition, but chronic inherently changes it because it implies it's not short-term and it persists after that direct cause is removed. So let's stop calling that chronic pain and call it what it really is, suffering. We don't want to admit that suffering exists, particularly when it's a direct result of our choices. But the unavoidable precursor to change is acceptance, because until you accept the current state of things, you cannot alter them. So what does this mean? You can embrace the pain of hitting the gym for 30 minutes a day to avoid the suffering of aches and pains of a sedentary lifestyle. You can embrace the pain of a difficult conversation with a loved one or spouse to avoid the suffering of being stuck in a loveless marriage when you really want divorce, or being stuck in a loveless marriage when you really want to reconnect, right? You can embrace the pain of a difficult conversation that your kids are sure to throw and the fit they're sure to throw by taking away their mobile devices at the dinner table to avoid years of lost meaningful connection and conversation that you'll never get back, right? As business owners, we can embrace the pain of firing our top salesperson who's contributing the most to top line growth to avoid the suffering of the stagnation and the cancer that they're causing within our society, because they also are the greatest source of toxicity. The suffering will exist if we don't recognize and identify the pains that we tend to avoid and learn to embrace them regularly and consistently. And all we're trying to get people to do in taking out your trash is to scan your can regularly. Is it painful? Does it make you feel like garbage and trash in those moments? Yeah, it does. But what's on the other side of it is complete freedom, complete clarity, complete alignment with who you are. And so this concept of embracing pain to avoid suffering is, look, I don't want anybody to exist in suffering. I know what that looks like. I know what it feels like. I've been there and I never want to be there again. And I don't want any of you to be there either, because you don't have to be. And so we're just trying to help people realize that the steps to move forward and remove the trash from your past regularly and consistently isn't going to be that hard once we've actually jumped in. We just have to remind ourselves that we're going to be okay. And embracing pain to avoid suffering is something I constantly pay attention to, because I don't want to suffer. And almost all suffering exists in 4 places: the things that are left unsaid, the things we lack permission to feel or say, the things we lack the words to articulate or understand, or the things that are left undone. By speaking my truth and living my purpose, which is to allow my truth to give others permission to live theirs, I give permission to feel things that they may not have otherwise felt. And I give them words to articulate and understand their unique experience so that they can act and do and move through the stuff that's keeping them stuck.
That was really well put. While you were talking, I was thinking, when people don't pursue personal growth and self-development, it's 2 things. It's bullshit to them. It's woo-woo. Or, man, I don't want to face that. That is scary. You're talking some serious trauma I dealt with, Brian. Don't you understand that I don't want to go back to that place?
Yep.
And the way you said, like, look, man, that garbage is sitting there and it is just rotting, and it's, you can't really get to whatever the meadow, the not utopia, because that doesn't exist, but whatever that place of your living your best life, we can't get there unless we deal with this trash bag thing. And everything you talked about is the opposite of instant gratification. Like,
it is.
There is no quick fix, by the way. There is no take this pill and all your problems go away. It doesn't exist.
It'd be great. And if we can invent that, bro, we should collaborate on that, because that'd be badass and we would change the world.
Yeah, man. And we might just create that utopia. But you know what? Even if we had, did you ever watch the show The Good Life? Did you ever see that?
Oh,
show?
yeah. Oh, yeah.
And what it made you realize, and obviously there's twists and turns in the show, but how much it would get so boring if everything was perfect. We need dark in order to have light, right?
It's the truth.
And this is the one thing, and I'm curious on your thoughts here. When something really nasty happens or something bad happens, I've started about a decade now of saying thank you, because I know when something bad happens, something really awesome is coming. But I didn't know that in my 20s, dude. It was like, let me be a victim. Let me be woe is me. Don't you realize how bad what just happened to me? Don't you realize that I had a business partner just steal millions of dollars? Like, feel for me. I am woe is me. And yet what I've learned is just to smile and say, all right, cool. Now what's up? So what are your thoughts on that, brother? Because this is a big idea and I want more people to embrace it, but it's not necessarily an easy concept to wrap your head around.
It's not an easy concept to wrap your head around, but the simplicity of being able to just understand how you have felt throughout the day, and any moments that you felt like trash or garbage means that you're carrying trash from your past. If you can just recognize that, then it becomes very simple, because if you want to continue to feel like garbage, continue to push through and push down, continue to ignore, continue to avoid, right? What I can guarantee you is the suffering that you have been trying to avoid your whole life, that just keeps to be existing right there in your existence, won't go away unless you turn inward. It just won't. I've seen it time and time and time again. And I work with people in their late 70s that are unpacking stuff from 60 years prior in their lives, which means they've got 60 years of feeling like garbage that they wish they could have avoided. And so that's what I want to ensure everybody. You're right. I'm not the guy that comes in and says, I've got a 7-step system for success. And if you follow this, you're going to live happy, joy, free, and fulfilled for the rest of your life. And you're going to have no more problems. That's a fucking lie. That's not the truth. I'm the expert in this space, and I've dug so deep, I've become the man and the mirror. I'm the man and the example I cast, and the mirror and the reflection I put back from your past. But the reality of understanding that is that I still exist in moments that I feel like trash and garbage, but that's the key. I don't exist there for years. I don't exist there for months. I don't exist there for weeks. I don't exist there for days. I don't even exist there for minutes anymore. I exist there for moments. And I'm able to take back and reclaim every moment in such a powerful way because of the amount I've dug. Same is obvious for you. But that's the thing, is that most people are waiting for a savior. They're waiting for a hero. They're waiting for that next 7-step system to success, or the strategy and tactic that's going to help them break free. But I'm here to tell you, the only way to really escape the same patterns that continue to show up in your life that cause you to feel empty, alone, scarce, fearful, shameful, guilty, perfectionist, control, all of those things that you feel are tied to the trash from your past and your need to protect something, which is causing armor and disconnection versus what you really want. And so all I want people to do is truly, if you can objectively and non-judgmentally just allow yourself to scan your can. What happened today? How many moments did I feel like trash? What were the sources of that trash? What were the narratives tied to that trash? Who put that into my world, right? If you just ask yourself one question, who was the last person that made you feel like garbage? It'll point you towards a whole lot.
You guys feel how it's not a sage on the stage. He's saying, look, man, I too go through this. This is where I hope the space is going, right? Because for years, and I'm not going to say names, but the people that
I know exactly what you're talking
about and just follow me, and it's bullshit, and yet it's not doing real work. It's just motivating for a couple days, and then and this is something I'm truly fighting against. And again, you know who I'm talking about. I know you do. What I love about what you said is like, man, I'm going through this, but I'm only there for moments. I'm not there for years. I was there, right? There's my darkest point at 20.
I have decades of my life gone from it, truly.
Yeah. And yet I've found some tools to figure out, and these questions are beautiful, brother. Who last made me feel like shit? I'm not going to be around them any longer, or my boundaries are properly set.
Or what does it reflect back in you about the patterns and trash from your past that cause you to feel like trash when it has nothing to do with what's right in front of you? It has everything to do with how your grandpa looked at you when you were 4 and you loaded the dishwasher incorrectly. Like, legitimately, that's what I want people to understand. 99% of the time when you feel like garbage in the moment, it has nothing to do with the moment of the person in front of you. It has everything to do with you, which is what I'm trying to get everybody to understand. I only want you to follow me as long as it takes you to elevate and empower you to follow you. I don't want people dependent on me in our world. To get to 1 billion lives and over 1 billion lives that we're trying to impact as quickly as possible, the only way to do it is to actually teach and empower and help people move. I don't want the same set of clients in perpetual motion for the rest of my life. That's not the kind of coach I am. The kind of coach I am is like, I'm going to speak truth into your world as long as you've got the courage to stand in it, and it's going to point you towards what's important so that you can move. I don't want you following me longer than you need to, just like I don't want you to sit in your trash longer than you need to, only as long as you can, so that it points you towards what is important for you.
I love that. I want to try and tie my question with armor to your unrooting and moving topic, because it's hard to move with armor, bro. Like, there's a reason that it was heavy, and you couldn't move well. And so you kept saying the word armor. I say masks, and it's so funny how so much of what we say is so similar. I love it. Talk to me about unrooting and moving.
Yeah.
And if you can tie in the armor, because you've said that many times, I'm guessing we have to shed the armor in order to do that.
Yeah. So I'm going to start on the armor first, because I think that That is the quickest way. There's two ways to really move through your trash. You can unpack it quickly and learn how to drop your armor and be present in the moment so that you can have a real-time impact and feeling of it. And then you can process a lot of stuff that's going to take more time and intention. But the armor is the piece that prevents us from what we want most. So I'll just walk you through this, and then we'll come full circle to the unpacking and the moving, because they're very relevant for people to hear. Here's the reality. I think in the human experience, we all seek and desire four things. We all seek and desire to feel safe. We all seek and desire to feel protected. We all seek and desire to feel seen and understood. And we all seek and desire to feel connected. Now, what happens when we're in an environment where we don't feel protected or we feel unsafe? We tend to protect ourselves. Our armor goes up. So if I gave you a 35-gallon black trash bag to hold out in front of you, you're not feeling safe. Now all of a sudden you're holding this out in front of you, brother. How could you properly portray who you are, your heart, your soul, your intent, your meanings, your words, everything through this opaque force field that you're holding out in front of you, and expect that anybody on the other side of it is going to be able to see and understand you, connect with you, and absorb you in the most authentic way that you intended it? It's impossible, by the way. And we know this when we just talk about guarded people in general. When we can't get someone to open up or they're not vulnerable and authentic, it's because they're carrying this guard, right? So you've literally been holding that trash bag out in front of you to protect yourself. But here's the crazy part. It actually disconnects you and ensures that you won't be seen and understood, which are the two things that you desire most. Okay? So here's the other side of it. Now I give you two trash bags that are full of trash. If I asked you to hold one bag out in each arm in front of you, how long could you hold it there, brother?
Not that long, man. My shoulders are weak these days, so not that long.
So you're going to feel it pretty quick, and then you're going to start feeling burning, right? And though the weight in the bag doesn't necessarily change, it feels heavier the longer you hold it, right? And so it's the same way with our trash. The longer we carry it, the longer we hold it, the more we suffer, and the heavier it gets, and the more it actually starts incrementally crushing us, okay? The other thing that's interesting is, like, if we think about armor, right, and cans and who we are, there's two types of trash cans in this world. There's ones with lids and ones without, okay? The ones without lids are those that wear everything on their sleeve. They're just open, but they're also like the bleeding heart. They're the ones that are just constantly out there. But because they've pushed down their trash so far, there's only so much room in the can. It's going to start trickling over the top, start burying other people in it, right? Then there's people like me. I not only had a lid, by the way, I had a seal on my lid. I had a lock on my lid. And that key was like buried in the fucking dump that I didn't even want to admit was there behind my house, right? And nobody was going to know that it existed. I didn't have fucking trash. Nope, no way. I wasn't going to, no, not going to admit that I have shit I need to work on, right? And so what happens in that case? We push down, we push down, we push down. Every time the world tells us to push through and show up with a smile on, we push down, we ignore. Oh, that wasn't that big of a deal. Oh, that didn't really impact me the way my dad looked at me that way, right? All this stuff we push down, but now we're creating a bomb, because the more we push down, the more pressure builds, and then it becomes a bomb that explodes with shrapnel of trash and creates a massive amount of damage in your world. And that's what happened with my anger, right? And so the reality of it is that armor is truly crushing us. It's disconnecting us. It's preventing you from being seen and understood. And so one of the things we teach is how to allow you to drop your armor so you can become the protector and the connector and the leader in each space. Because if you can convince yourself that you're safe, because you know who you are, you've done enough digging, you know the stuff that you could trip on, you know your failing points, and you can stand there with a strong spine and a soft front, meaning there is no armor, then people are willing to lean in, right? If I had a chest plate on, that knight in shining armor, do you want to lay your head on my chest to have me hold you? No, nobody does. Yet people try to give empathy and compassion while they're still guarded. It's complete wall. I just want you to stand there with a soft front and a strong spine, because you know who you are. And when you can lower your own armor, you can wrap it around the environments you're in so that everybody's safe, everybody's protected, everybody's seen and understood, and everybody's connected. And we have the ability to facilitate that. That's what armor is. Armor is literally the thing that we think is protecting us, and it's taking us further away from who we are and what we want in this world. And it truly is something that I want everybody to let go of, because when we defend and when our armor comes up, the first question to ask is, what am I protecting? What am I protecting right now? It'll point you towards some of your trash that you need to unpack. The unpacking is where we actually get people to sit in it. Okay. I believe that if we don't feel, we don't heal, period. Right. And I know for a fact that when I shut off physical pain because it exceeded my ability to cope, I shut off mental pain, emotional pain, and spiritual pain for 25 years. I did not feel. I did not understand human connection. And I'm telling you that the healing started once I allowed myself to feel. And when I realized how much I was unconsciously, actively suppressing and pushing down so much, it was never intentional for me to do that. I didn't know it was happening because it was all protectionary, designed to defend myself. But it actually made me feel more isolated and disconnected. And so that's what I really want to say is that, you know, I got the text from someone the other day. They said, man, I've been really avoiding my shame lately. I've been really like, just, it's not affecting me. When in reality, shame is his biggest source of trash. And shame is the ultimate sheep in wolf's clothing because it presents itself as scarcity, perfectionism, control, scarcity, guilt, worth, all of it. Like it literally is so hard to identify. And so I really want people to sit in those moments that shaped them to better understand it, or just to allow, what do you feel in your body right now? You know, when I ask that to most people, they answer with an emotion. Well, I feel angry, or I feel frustrated, right? No. Physiologically, what's happening in your body? Well, my heart rate goes up. I'm feeling a little bit of tension in my chest and my throat. I'm starting to get like my mind spinning. Okay, now you're starting to understand how those emotions move through your body. And the movement stage is important because it's about how it moves through your body, how it moves through your world, and how do you move through it. You have to sit in it long enough to understand it. But shame moves through my body 5 or 6 different ways. I talk fast. I'm loud. Anybody who's been listening to this probably already figured that out. But when I was running in my risk management employee benefits consulting business, and we had clients that were multiple billions of dollars and we're sitting in those boardrooms, do you know how many times I had a business partner reach over and be like, shh, Ryan, you can't talk so fast. You can't talk so loud. And what would happen? I would shrink. I'd feel my heart start beating out of my chest. I would literally like start to sweat a little bit. And I'd bite my tongue, and I'd because I didn't feel good. That was shame. I didn't know how it was moving. And then my wife could ask me, hey, babe, what are we gonna do with the kids this weekend? Totally innocent question. But my shame trash caused me to hear it this way. Hey, babe, you've not done enough to be a good husband and father recently. So what are you gonna do this weekend to make up for it? Right? Now all of a sudden my heart's racing, my blood pressure's going up. I feel the wave of heat, and I feel like this defense. My chest goes the other way, not in. And I rattle off the 10 things I've done in the last 4 days to show her I'm a good husband and father. That wasn't even what she asked, right? And so until you know how things move through your body, you cannot put yourself in the moment long enough to understand how it moves through your world, i.e. the moments that trigger you, the moments that put you into that state of feeling like garbage or trash or reaction or protection, right? I have 5 or 6 different ways that shame moves through my body, 5 or 6 different ways that anger moves through my body. And I have over 50 shame triggers that I'm aware of and over 60 anger triggers that I'm aware of. But what that allows me to do is to know that going in, so that if my son, who's on the spectrum and has sensory issues himself, and he also has impulse control problems, and I'm focused on something on the couch, comes and jumps on me, I don't have to allow myself to react in that moment and get guard and armor, because even if I don't react to him, he feels my energy, and it's not open, it's not accepting, it's not loving. That's not what I want my son to experience, right? If I got into an argument with my spouse and I walk in to lead my team and I'm still carrying something, you don't think that's going to be infused in the energy of the meeting and impact every part of the communication and the outcome of where we're headed, right? So for me, it's the only way to move is that I have to know how it moves through my body, how it moves through my world, so that I can pause in those moments and ask myself, is what I'm reacting to right now having to do with what's right in front of me or the trash from my past? And now when my wife asks me a question like that, I can move through it like this, because that's how we move. She says, hey, what are we doing with the kids this weekend? If I don't hear it correctly, I can immediately reclaim ownership for myself by my own awareness and the amount of unpacking I've done, and by flipping my lid and scanning my can real time so that I see what rose to the top. And I can say to her, hey, babe, I just got triggered a little bit and I tripped on my trash based on what you said. And I don't think I heard you correctly. So I'm going to try to diffuse my energy. Do you mind repeating it so I can hear you more clearly this next time? And if I can't get myself there, maybe we can pause and revisit this later. Now I've created no damage, which means I don't have to go create repair. And so it's just by being aware enough and owning where I'm at in my world and realizing that my reaction probably has nothing to do with her. And it probably has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with the trash from my past, but it allows me to reclaim it, understand it, and connect those patterns so that I can move in any situation.
That's some self-awareness right there, and truly being able to respond and not react, right? I mean, guys, that's why I meditate. I've said it 1,000 times on the show. I meditate so I can respond and not react. Brian, I can't believe how fast this went. Just kind of a short last minute, anything on your heart that I didn't know enough to ask you that you just want to make sure to share before we kind of wrap up?
You don't have to walk the path alone, and you don't have to lean into coaching. In fact, I would argue 90 to 95% of you are not ready for coaching. But if you want more connection in your life, ask yourself, how do I connect more deeply with myself? How do you connect more deeply with you? And when you can start to create that connection and then realize that those around you only want to connect deeper with themselves and with you as well, you can start to ask questions to raise levels of awareness and diffuse situations right in front of you by being in the moment and not judging the moment. You have the power to do that, and you have the power to move. And I know that you've been stuck before. You may be stuck now, and you will be stuck again. I just don't want you to have to stay stuck in the yuck and muck from the trash from your past. I want you to move, because that's where we create freedom for you and for so many others. Because again, moved people move people.
So good, man. And as a coach, guys, what he's saying is so true. The coach cannot want it more than you. It won't work. I literally said it to a couple clients this morning that were sitting in that chair. I can't want it more than you. It just won't work. Brother, I want to support what you're doing to help 1 billion people, which that's an awesome goal. I can't wait to ask you behind how the hell we're going to track that goal. I love it. But for those, that want to take out some trash, want to really start to live life in a fulfilling way, how can they connect with you, brother? What's the best place, to connect with you online?
Social media, on any channel, I am at Bogert Brian. Again, it's Bogert. It's Bogert like yogurt, even though it's spelled with an E, not a U. And then it's Brian with an I. You can find me on any channel. If you would like to learn more about anything we're doing, just shoot me a DM and start with something as simple as your name. But what I would also tell you is, if you're interested in actually going through this with a group of people, with structure, with guidance, we do our Take Out Your Trash challenge once a month, every month. It's 7 days, less than 10 minutes a day, and it will have infinite results in your life. I promise you that. And so I absolutely know that if you are in a place to do it, the challenge is only $8. And if there's a financial reason that you can't pay that, you just talk to me and let me know, because we want as many people moving as possible. So you can DM me. You can also check out our website at brianbogert.com. And there's going to be a lot more around the Take Out Your Trash language being seen in all of our worlds very, very soon. So I'm excited about some big stuff we're working on. And thank you for building such an amazing platform for me to come pour into, brother.
I appreciate you, man. I love what you're doing. You and I are going to do some cool work down the road. That's what was so cool throughout, man. I got so much, and that's why I love doing this podcast, is meeting amazing humans like you. So thank you for being here, man. You're amazing, dude.
Thank you, pal. Thank you. Yeah, we got a lot of work to do together, brother.
Yeah, we do. All right, you guys. Geez, I can't recap that. We all have this stuff, and he's giving you real tools, real ways to really fulfill your life. And I want you to reach out. We'll have it all in the show notes. Go do the challenge. I'm doing it, and I'd love to be a part of it with you. So make sure to share this. There's so much goodness for everybody that you know. Literally, there's not one person that could not hear the show that would not benefit from it, that could hear the show. I said that wrong, but that would hear the show that would not benefit. Please share this. Get Brian in front of your people. I appreciate you all. Until next time, remember, your mindset matters. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much for listening. If this content is delivering value to you, please make sure to subscribe, rate, and review us. That helps us build this community, and that is what we are all about. Building this community as big as we can, helping as many people as we can, and deliver as much value as possible. Be sure to head over to letsgowinpodcast.com for information on my coaching courses, and make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Let's Go Win 365. Let's go win and transcend in life.
This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, J.M. Ryerson.